Nostradamus's Lost Page, a terrifying prophecy unveiled. What if the key to understanding our future lies not in fear, but in wisdom? In today's video on the journey of wisdom, we explore a chilling revelation. Nostradamus's Lost Page, a prophecy long hidden from the public eye, now unveiled. While the words may sound ominous, they offer more than just mystery. They invite us to reflect deeply on our lives, choices, and the world we are shaping. As you listen, ask yourself, how can this ancient warning help us grow wiser, kinder, and more mindful today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if this journey sparks something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's uncover not just predictions, but the lessons they hold for our inner and outer worlds. Number 1. The Three Black Suns. The passage of the three black suns carries a weight that reaches far beyond ancient prophecy. It taps into the heart of our present global uncertainty. On the surface, the imagery may seem poetic, even fantastical, but when we look closer, we begin to understand a deeper message hidden beneath its mystery. The three black suns, once thought to signify celestial anomalies or symbolic darkness, take on new meaning when viewed through the lens of our modern world. They are not literal stars, but symbols of immense global power. Three nations, the United States, China, and Russia, whose influence has shaped the political, economic, and military balance of the modern age. According to the prophecy, these powers will enter a time of simultaneous internal darkness in 2025, not necessarily through war alone, but through collapse from within. This is where wisdom begins to emerge, from the words of ancient warning, the idea that no matter how strong a structure appears from the outside, decay often begins at the core. The line, and lo, the three black suns shall set upon themselves, spilling their fire upon the soil of the earth, and the air shall burn with iron breath, reads like a vision of catastrophic warfare, possibly nuclear, with unimaginable consequences. But it also invites a broader reflection. Whether literal or symbolic, this warning teaches us about the dangers of unchecked power, of pride that blinds nations and individuals alike, and the inevitable cost of ignoring the suffering that simmers beneath the surface of any empire. In today's context, we see rising tensions, polarized societies, and the crumbling trust in institutions all over the world. Each black sun seems to reflect not just global governments, but also the inner state of our collective human condition. A warning that when we forget compassion, unity, and wisdom, we risk imploding under the weight of our own shadows. Yet the prophecy does not end in despair. It speaks of a fourth force, something unseen, that rises after the fall of the three powers. Here the message turns from fear to insight. This fourth power could be anything. It could be a spiritual awakening, a rise in collective consciousness, or a more humble, decentralized form of leadership, rooted not in domination, but in cooperation. In Buddhist philosophy, this aligns beautifully with the idea of impermanence and rebirth. When old forms collapse, space is created for something new and potentially more harmonious to emerge. Just as a forest fire clears space for new growth, global crises, painful as they are, can offer the seeds of transformation. But this transformation does not happen automatically. It must be cultivated through mindfulness, ethical action, and wisdom. For us today, this isn't just a prophecy about nations. It's a mirror for our own lives. Are there black suns within us, parts of ourselves driven by ego, greed, or fear, that are heading toward collapse? What old structures in our personal lives or communities are asking to be let go of, so that something more sustainable can take root. The advice here is not to sit in fear, but to live awake. Pay attention to the signs around you, not with paranoia, but with presence. Seek clarity over chaos. Be the fourth power in your own world, the force that rises not to dominate, but to heal, connect, and guide with compassion. In this way, prophecy becomes wisdom, and wisdom becomes a path toward peace. Number 2. Veins of blood in the sea. Let's take a closer look at what's being called veins of blood in the sea. At first glance, this sounds like a terrifying line from a dark poem or a dramatic prophecy. But if we pause and reflect, there's a deeper message unfolding here, one that speaks not only to our fears, but also to our responsibilities. In ancient texts, especially those by prophets like Nostradamus, language often dances between poetry and warning. The phrase, "When the seas crawl upon the land, and the rivers drink the sun, all that lives shall taste the bitter salt of death," feels apocalyptic. But what if this isn't just about doom, but about awakening? Many early scholars dismissed these lines as symbolic of war or civil strife, but modern science is starting to catch up in unexpected ways. Oceanographers and climate researchers are noticing that the imagery of bleeding seas may not be as metaphorical as once thought. With our planet warming rapidly, polar ice melting faster than predicted, and vital ocean currents, like the thermohaline circulation, showing signs of strain, the balance that keeps marine life thriving is under real threat. If this system fails, we could see stagnant, oxygen-depleted oceans where life can no longer survive, where once living waters become silent and suffocating. Now, ask yourself, if the oceans die, what happens to us? Others believe the veins of blood could reference something even more visible and immediate, like oil spills or large-scale pollution events that turn the sea into a dark, lifeless sludge. Think of the damage we've already seen from industrial waste, chemical runoff, and oil disasters. The ocean, once a source of life and balance, is being slowly choked. These aren't distant possibilities anymore. They are environmental tipping points that scientists warn are drawing closer with each passing year. So we come back to the question, was Nostradamus describing the end, or was he pointing us toward a choice? Is this a prophecy or a mirror being held up to our actions? In a way, the wisdom in this passage doesn't lie in its accuracy as a prediction, but in its power to make us stop and think. What are we doing to the earth? And what are the consequences if we continue? Whether or not you believe in prophecy, the reality of our environmental crisis is undeniable. And from a Buddhist perspective, this is a powerful teaching moment. In the Buddha's teachings, we are reminded of interdependence, that everything is connected: the sea, the sky, the forests, the cities, and yes, our individual actions, all part of one living system. If we poison one part, we poison the whole. The suffering of the oceans is not separate from our own suffering. So let this not just be a prophecy of destruction, but a call to wisdom. How can we live more mindfully, consume less, protect more, and care deeper for the earth that sustains us? What choices can you make today that ripple out toward healing rather than harm? Remember, wisdom doesn't lie in avoiding hard truths. It lies in facing them with courage, compassion, and clarity. The lesson here is simple yet powerful. All life is connected, and our choices matter. If we turn away from ignorance and towards mindful action, we still have the power to change the future. The sea may be vast, but even the smallest drop of compassion contributes to the healing of its depths. Number 3. The Crimson God. Let me tell you a story, one that stretches through time and mystery, where ancient prophecies whisper across centuries, stirring fear, wonder, and questions deep in our hearts. Among the most chilling sections of Nostradamus' so-called lost page lies a prophecy known as the Crimson God. It's not just poetic warning, it feels like a heartbeat echoing through history, one that speaks directly to you and me, urging us to pay attention. In this haunting passage, Nostradamus writes, "From the iron lands he shall rise, red with the blood of the innocent. His voice shall command the wind, and his breath shall devour cities, and men will pray to the empty skies, but they shall find no answer." What do you feel when you hear those words? Fear? Curiosity? A quiet recognition of something we see taking shape in the world around us? The Crimson God has become a symbol that invites many interpretations, and perhaps that's what makes it so unsettling. Some believe this figure is a tyrant, a dictator cloaked in bloodshed and power, rising from regions scarred by war and industry, the so-called Iron Lands. History has seen many such figures, hasn't it? Each one driven by a hunger for control, leaving behind a trail of suffering. Could Nostradamus be warning us that this cycle will repeat? Or are we already living it? Others see the Crimson God as something less human, more metaphysical, a force of mass hysteria or blind fanaticism, a wave of violence born from ideological extremism. Think about it. In recent years, haven't we seen how fear and belief, when twisted together, can turn ordinary people into instruments of chaos? Entire communities are swallowed by hate, truth is drowned by noise, and suddenly no one can hear the cries for peace. How do we as individuals respond to this rising tide? And then there's the most fascinating and perhaps most terrifying theory of all, that the Crimson God isn't a person or even a god, but a machine, a metaphor for artificial intelligence, something we are building with our own hands, programming with our own minds, yet increasingly unable to control. AI, once a dream of progress, could easily become a nightmare of dominance. Think about the way technology is evolving, faster than laws, faster than ethics, even faster than human understanding. If intelligence without compassion gains power, what happens to the soul of society? Buddha once said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." But what happens when the mind is no longer human? Will machines inherit our best qualities or only reflect our darkest flaws? All of this leads us to a question I want to ask you, one that I've been asking myself too. What is the real Crimson God in our world today? Is it a literal leader, a dangerous ideology, a technological force we can't stop, or is it something within us, something born of fear, desire, and ignorance? The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment and delusion. So maybe the Crimson God is not just something that happens to us, but something we create, through the choices we make, the truths we ignore, and the peace we abandon. What can we do, then, to avoid this future? How can we move from fear to understanding, from destruction to harmony? You see, in every prophecy, even the darkest ones, there is always a hidden invitation to wake up, not in panic, but in mindfulness, not in helplessness, but in compassionate action. We may not stop the rising storm alone, but as Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, when another person makes you suffer, it is because he suffers deeply within himself. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding. So perhaps the Crimson God isn't a doom we are destined for, but a mirror urging us to look deeper, ask better questions, and begin the healing within before it's too late. You've just scratched the surface of Nostradamus' most chilling vision. Type "I seek the truth" in the comments if you're brave enough to explore what others fear to know. Keep watching. What's coming next might just change everything you thought about the future. Number 4. The fifth moon and the dust of heaven. The Fifth Moon and the Dust of Heaven. A title that sounds like ancient poetry, yet carries a heavy warning that has unsettled both scholars and skeptics alike. What begins as cryptic symbolism unfolds into a grave message, one that stretches far beyond metaphor and taps into a primal fear shared across generations. The fear of the end, not just of life, but of civilization itself. In this chilling passage from Nostradamus's Lost Page, he writes, "And when the fifth moon is swallowed by darkness, the sky itself shall split from it. Not rain nor flame, but the dust of heaven, black and without mercy, and none shall escape it." This is not just apocalyptic imagery, it's a dire vision of a future moment when humanity's ongoing fight for survival may reach a point of no return. Many modern experts, studying both the astronomical and symbolic references, believe this could allude to a massive cosmic event, perhaps an asteroid crashing into Earth, or a gamma-ray burst sweeping through the atmosphere, instantly reshaping life as we know it. The dust of heaven, as cryptic as it sounds, might not be from the stars at all, but instead the remains of human achievement. Burned cities, crumbled monuments, and civilizations turned into drifting ash, weightless and forgotten. In a deeper sense, it's a poetic yet brutal reminder that our great towers, technologies, and triumphs could all be reduced to mere particles in the wind if we continue on a path of disconnection, destruction, and disregard for the natural world and each other. And yet, while such a prophecy seems dark and unyielding, we are not powerless. That's the thread we must not lose in hearing such warnings. If Nostradamus' vision holds even a grain of truth, it's not necessarily an unavoidable destiny, but a wake-up call echoing through time. Today we live in an age of both great technological advancement and unprecedented vulnerability, from climate change and war to the erosion of truth and trust in society. The idea of a sky splitting open and raining down not fire but silent black dust may serve as a metaphor for the slow, creeping collapse we might not even see until it's too late. But in acknowledging these fears, we also find the opportunity to reflect. How are we treating our planet? How are we treating each other? Are we sowing the seeds of harmony, or are we feeding the fires of division and decay? The wisdom hidden in ancient texts often speaks in symbols, and we don't need to take every word literally to extract its meaning. In modern life, this prophecy urges us to look beyond the noise of daily distractions and return to a path of mindfulness, compassion, and collective responsibility. It teaches that survival is not only about enduring disaster, but about avoiding it through conscious choices. We must reconnect with the earth, simplify our wants, and nurture the human spirit, not in fear of doomsday, but in reverence for the life we already have. Whether the fifth moon is a celestial body or a symbol of spiritual darkness, the true message lies in how we respond to the warnings. Will we drift like dust in the wind, or will we ground ourselves in wisdom and choose a different path? The choice remains, as always, ours. Wisdom from prophecy: how to prepare with mindfulness and compassion. When faced with prophecies that speak of darkness, war, environmental collapse, or spiritual decay, the natural human reaction is fear. But fear, if not understood, quickly turns into paralysis. In Buddhist philosophy, fear is not something to be suppressed, but something to be observed and transformed. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Fear keeps us focused on the past or worried about the future." If we can acknowledge our fear, we can realize that right now we are okay. And that is the foundation of all preparation. Not panic, but presence. So how can we truly prepare for a world where such prophecies may unfold? The answer lies in mastering ourselves before we try to control external events. Number 1, we must train the mind to respond, not react. In preparing for uncertain times and navigating prophecy with wisdom, the first and most essential step is to train the mind not to react impulsively, but to respond with clarity, compassion, and awareness. In moments of crisis, whether personal or collective, it is not the loudest voice or the quickest hand that endures. It is the calm mind that survives, and the centered heart that guides others forward. This calmness is not something we stumble upon in a moment of panic. It is cultivated slowly, through daily acts of mindfulness, such as sitting in quiet meditation, offering a prayer with sincerity, or even pausing for 3 conscious breaths before speaking or acting. These small practices act like roots in a storm. They may be invisible, but they hold us steady when everything around us shakes. The Buddha said, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger," reminding us that the chaos we experience often originates not outside of us, but within the reactions we fail to regulate. When we learn to sit with discomfort, rather than trying to escape it or fix it immediately, we develop the strength to act wisely and the patience to see what is really unfolding beneath the surface. So many of our mistakes in life do not arise from ignorance, but from haste, from rushing into speech or action without the anchor of stillness. That is why the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." If we do not take the time to create this inner anchor, we will be pulled by every wind of fear, every whisper of rumor, and every emotional storm we encounter. This way of training the mind may seem subtle, but its effects are powerful. In a world increasingly driven by noise, speed, and fear, choosing to respond instead of react becomes a radical act of wisdom. When we slow down to observe our thoughts and emotions without immediately following them, we stop feeding the fire of confusion. Instead, we feed clarity, kindness, and discernment. And it is discernment, not panic, that will serve us when we are called to make decisions in challenging times. As prophecy and warning often stir the heart with unease, we must remember that fear is not a reliable teacher. Presence is. Just as a wise farmer prepares for the changing seasons not with panic, but with careful tending of the land, we too must prepare for life's uncertainties by tending the soil of our own minds with compassion and presence. A Tibetan proverb reminds us, "The secret to living well and longer is, eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure." While this may seem simple, it is precisely this simplicity that holds timeless truth. In our efforts to understand what the future holds, we must not overlook the now, for it is only through mastering our present state of mind that we gain the power to meet the future with grace. So let this be our practice, not just for spiritual growth, but for practical resilience. Pause, breathe, observe, and act from a place of centered intention. The world may continue to shift, and uncertainty may remain a constant companion, but when the mind is steady and the heart is soft, we become a refuge for ourselves and for others. And in doing so, we prepare not through fear, but through mindfulness and love. Number 2, simplify your life. Let's talk about something simple yet deeply transformative: simplifying your life. In times of change, uncertainty, or even crisis, it's often those who are tightly holding on to their possessions, status, or image who suffer the most. Why? Because when we build our identity around things that are temporary, wealth, recognition, or even control, we place our peace in the hands of something that can disappear at any moment. So, here's a gentle invitation for you. Start practicing detachment now. But let's be clear, detachment doesn't mean you give everything away or abandon life. It means living with intention. It means choosing what truly matters and releasing what no longer serves your well-being or your purpose. Think about your daily life. What do you surround yourself with that brings stress instead of peace? Is your home cluttered not just with things, but with the energy of obligations, regrets, or unresolved emotions? Sometimes what we need to release isn't in our closets, it's in our hearts. So ask yourself, what do I really need to live a meaningful life? What if the peace you're seeking isn't found by adding more, but by letting go of the excess? Not just physical things, but the mental baggage too. Grudges that tire your spirit, regrets that keep you in the past, or ego-driven goals that pull you away from what's real and lasting. The teachings of the Buddha remind us that clinging is the root of suffering. When we cling to expectations, roles, or even pain, we create a tightness in our lives. But when we let go, we create space for clarity, for connection, for compassion. This is the essence of mindful living, not chasing after more, but being present with less and seeing how much more whole we feel in that space. Can you notice the difference in your body and mind when you think of holding on versus gently letting go? This practice is not about loss, it's about freedom. The freedom to move through life lightly, the freedom to love without fear, the freedom to change when life calls you to. So begin small. Simplify one corner of your room, one part of your schedule, or even one long-held belief. With each act of simplification, you're not just clearing space in your environment, you're opening a doorway in your heart. So, here's the reflection for today. What is one thing, just one, that you can release this week so you can live with more peace and purpose? You might be surprised how much lighter you feel when you do. Remember, true security comes not from what we hold on to, but from how deeply we're grounded in who we are without it. When we prepare our lives with mindfulness and compassion, we're not reacting to fear, we're responding with wisdom. And wisdom always begins with simplicity. Lesson to carry with you. Simplifying your life doesn't mean having less. It means needing less to be content. The more you let go, the more space you create for joy, for clarity, and for true inner freedom. Let your life reflect your values, not your attachments. In the end, that's where peace is found. Number 3, prepare spiritually and emotionally for change. All right, let's take a deep breath together. The third wisdom we explore today is this: prepare yourself spiritually and emotionally for change. Now I want to speak to you directly, because this isn't just an abstract idea or a poetic phrase. It's a gentle but urgent invitation to look inward and cultivate a space within yourself that is steady, compassionate, and awake, even when the world outside is uncertain. Change is not a question of if, but when. Whether it comes as a whisper or a storm, it will visit each of us. So the real question becomes, how will you meet it? You see, when we talk about preparing spiritually, we're not talking about memorizing sacred texts or retreating into silence on a mountaintop. we're talking about grounding yourself in practices that make your heart resilient and your mind calm. This could be as simple as sitting with a cup of tea and writing in your journal, honestly, gently, checking in with your feelings. What am I afraid of? What do I need? Who do I want to be in times of challenge? That kind of raw honesty builds clarity. Or maybe your spiritual practice is prayer, not necessarily in a religious sense, but in the quiet way you reach out for meaning or connect to something bigger than yourself. Maybe you pray when you light a candle. Maybe you pray when you place your hand on your heart and whisper, "May I be well. May others be well." That's prayer too. And perhaps you prepare emotionally by serving others, not because you want recognition, but because every act of kindness plants a seed of peace, both in their life and in yours. It doesn't have to be big. You could bring food to a friend who's struggling, or hold space for someone who's grieving, not trying to fix them, just being there fully. Even smiling at someone who feels invisible can change the atmosphere of their entire day. In times of uncertainty, kindness is more than just being nice. It's a powerful form of spiritual resistance. It says, "I will not let fear or anger shape who I am becoming." Every time you choose to help instead of turn away, to forgive instead of hold on, to listen instead of argue, you are building spiritual muscle. And I promise you, that kind of strength doesn't get shaken easily, no matter what the world throws at you. So I ask you now, what does emotional preparation look like in your life? Who or what helps you feel anchored when the winds of change start to blow? If nothing comes to mind, don't worry. This isn't about having all the answers. It's about staying open enough to ask the right questions. Can you be more gentle with yourself today than you were yesterday? Can you offer someone else a little more grace, even if they don't deserve it? These small shifts are where real change begins. Personally, I've found that the more I serve others in times of stress, not out of obligation but out of love, the more peace I feel inside. It's like life starts to flow again. When we stop trying to control everything and instead focus on how we show up, how we treat people, how we treat ourselves, we begin to see that the preparation we need has less to do with doing and more to do with being. So as we wrap up this part of the journey, let me leave you with this. The future may be unknown, but your inner world doesn't have to be. Fortify it, nurture it. Let compassion, honesty and service be the ground you stand on, because no matter what any prophecy says, that kind of strength can never be destroyed. If you've made it this far, you're already opening your heart to a path of clarity, mindfulness and compassion in uncertain times. Comment below with "peaceful path" to affirm your commitment to preparing wisely and living with awareness. Don't leave just yet. There's still deep insight ahead to help you face the future with calm and courage. Stay until the end and walk this journey with us. Number 4. Reconnect with nature. The prophecy of the veins of blood in the sea serves not only as a symbolic warning of ecological collapse, but also as a wake-up call about our increasingly fractured relationship with the natural world. In our fast-paced, convenience-driven lives, we often forget that the Earth is not a resource to exploit endlessly, but a living system that holds us, nourishes us, and responds to our actions. When ancient teachings speak of oceans turning red, they are reflecting more than just the visible signs of environmental decay. They are pointing toward the deeper wounds caused by our disconnection and neglect. This disconnection is not only external, it runs through our hearts and minds, dulling our sense of awe and making us forget our place in the greater web of life. One powerful way to begin healing this rift is through simple, grounded acts of care. Start by growing something with your own hands, whether it's a small pot of basil on your windowsill or a humble patch of soil in your backyard. Nurturing life teaches us patience, responsibility, and interdependence. It reminds us that growth requires attention, and attention requires presence. This is mindfulness in its most organic form. And while it might seem small in the grand scheme of things, tending a plant is a sacred act of reconnection, a gentle rebellion against the culture of waste and speed. In moments of stillness under the open sky, we begin to remember who we are beneath all the noise. When we take time to walk barefoot on the earth, to feel the sun on our skin or the wind through the trees, we reawaken a part of ourselves that has been asleep, something ancient, wise, and quiet. These moments are not just poetic, they are necessary. In a world saturated with digital distractions and artificial urgency, creating space for silence and communion with nature is a form of healing, both for ourselves and for the planet. The ground beneath our feet is not just something we walk on, it is the very foundation of life. And yet, without deep respect and reciprocal care, we risk not only ecological disaster, but spiritual desolation. So let this prophecy stir not fear but action, not despair but compassion. Protecting the earth begins with seeing her again, not as background scenery, but as a living teacher. When we bow in gratitude to the natural world, when we clean up a stream, plant a tree, or choose sustainable options in our daily lives, we are not just reducing our footprint, we are returning home. In today's world, where climate anxiety and environmental fatigue are common, many feel overwhelmed and powerless. But remember, the path of wisdom has never been about grand gestures. It is about small, consistent acts done with awareness and love. The Buddha taught that the roots of suffering lie in ignorance and craving, and much of our environmental harm comes from this same blindness. To walk the path of compassion now means choosing differently, choosing to consume less, to honor life more, and to slow down enough to hear the whisper of the wind and the rhythm of the earth. Let nature be your mirror. Let her seasons teach you about change, her forests teach you about balance, and her silence teach you about peace. In this way, prophecy becomes guidance, and fear becomes fuel for transformation. Through mindful reconnection with nature, we plant not only seeds in the soil, but seeds of hope, wisdom, and resilience in our collective future. Number 5. Build community, not just connections. In today's fast-moving, often divided world, it's easy to feel like we're all just individuals drifting past one another, connected by technology but distant in spirit. But when we talk about real preparation, especially from a mindful and compassionate perspective, it's not just about stocking up on resources or mastering skills. True preparation means building something far more powerful: trust, support, and unity with the people around us. So ask yourself, are you creating real community or just collecting contacts? A true community isn't formed from surface-level interactions. It's born when people see each other as fellow travelers on the path, with shared hopes, fears, and dreams. That's where the real strength lies. This kind of connection doesn't happen by accident. It begins when we step forward with intention. Maybe it's time to join a local meditation group, or simply sit down with someone you know and have a meaningful conversation. One where you listen more than you speak, and where your presence brings a sense of calm rather than chaos. When the world feels uncertain, your steady heart can be a refuge for others. What would it look like if you became the voice of peace in your circle? Could your words bring warmth in cold times? Could your presence ease someone's fear? The prophecy speaks of the collapse of three powers and the rise of a fourth. But if there is to be a new power rising from the ashes, let us not imagine it as another force to conquer, control, or divide. Let it be a power that comes from cooperation instead of competition, from compassion instead of conquest. What if the next great power is not political, military, or economic, but spiritual? A collective awakening grounded in mindfulness, mutual care, and shared humanity. This is not a fantasy. This is a choice, a path we can walk together, starting right now. So let your daily actions reflect this wisdom. Choose to reach out with kindness. Create spaces, online or in person, where people feel safe, heard, and valued. Instead of asking what you can get from others, ask what you can give to help others feel whole. Instead of reacting with fear or judgment, respond with understanding. Every little act of community building matters more than you think. Even small efforts, done with sincerity, can ripple outward and change the tone of a household, a neighborhood, or even a whole city. Isn't that worth investing in? In these uncertain times, remember that you don't have to face the world alone. When we prepare not just with tools but with togetherness, we become stronger than any challenge ahead. And we don't just survive, we help each other thrive. So let me ask you, what's one step you can take today to strengthen the bonds around you? Who in your life could use your compassion, your listening ear, or your helping hand? Here's the lesson. Lasting preparation is not only about what you carry, it's about who you walk with. Build real relationships rooted in trust. Show up as a person others can rely on. Be the calm in the storm. And let your heart be part of a larger wave of compassion that reshapes the world, not with force, but with love. Number 6. Educate yourself without drowning in fear. Let's talk about something deeply important. The kind of education that doesn't overwhelm you, but instead empowers you. In times when the world feels uncertain, when you hear prophecies or warnings about the future, whether they come from spiritual texts, scientific predictions, or the whisperings of a troubled society, it's easy to let fear take over. But dear listener, fear is not your teacher, wisdom is. And wisdom does not shout or frighten, it guides with a steady hand and a calm heart. So how do we prepare ourselves wisely, not anxiously? First, by embracing the kind of education that is rooted not just in facts, but in balance. Yes, it's helpful to read widely, to explore both ancient teachings and modern science. Don't limit yourself to one perspective. Study the world through different lenses, spiritual, historical, ecological, and learn practical skills too, like how to grow your own food, how to stay calm in a crisis, how to care for yourself and others. But do this not out of panic, not because you think the world is ending tomorrow, but because taking responsibility for your life is a beautiful act of love, for yourself and for the people around you. Now, here's where it gets even more important. Developing discernment. In a time when misinformation spreads faster than truth, when fear is sold more easily than wisdom, you must become your own lighthouse. Not everything you hear is true. Not every so-called prophecy is a warning you need to carry. So ask yourself, what do I know deeply? Not just what have I been told? How can I tell the difference between guidance that brings peace and noise that brings anxiety? This is where mindfulness becomes your greatest companion. It's not just about sitting still or watching your breath. It's about paying attention to your own thoughts, your reactions, your triggers. It's learning to pause before believing, to question before spreading, to listen before reacting. This kind of mindfulness gives birth to compassion, because when you're no longer tossed around by fear, you become someone others can lean on. So let me ask you, what are you feeding your mind today? Are you choosing voices that speak with clarity and kindness, or ones that leave you more confused and heavy-hearted? Are you learning out of love or out of fear? Because this matters more than you might realize. It shapes how you speak to others. It shapes how you see the future. If we all took in just a little less fear and practiced a little more discernment, can you imagine what kind of world we'd be living in? A world where preparation is no longer a reaction to doom, but a thoughtful, loving way of walking together through whatever comes. As someone walking this path with you, I'll say this from my heart. True wisdom prepares without panic. It sees clearly, but doesn't tremble. It learns constantly, but doesn't become arrogant. And above all, it remembers that even when everything outside seems uncertain, you still have the power to be calm, to be kind, to be clear. That is the kind of preparation that changes not only your life, but the world around you. So, what wisdom are you choosing to walk with today? As we've seen today, even the darkest prophecies can offer light, if we're willing to look beyond fear and into wisdom. Whether you see Nostradamus' words as warning, poetry, or mirror, the message is clear. The future is shaped not just by fate, but by the choices we make now, with awareness, compassion, and courage. Thank you for walking this path with us. If today's journey sparked reflection, helped you see with new eyes, or simply made you pause and think, we'd love for you to be part of this growing community. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom.